All right. Welcome to the March 3rd City Council meeting. May we start with a roll call?
Councilmember Penrose? Here. Councilmember Rohrbeck?
Here.
Councilmember Reddick?
Here.
Vice Mayor Brownstone?
Here.
Mayor Eisen?
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right. Welcome all. Can we do a pledge of allegiance? Will you all kindly rise? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for some.
All right, thank you. You may be seated. Yeah, here we go. Okay.
Oh, I need one too. Jessica, do you
Yeah,
have one?
she'll get them for us. Okay, beautiful. So for the approval of the agenda tonight, we are asking that we continue item 2A and 2B to a date uncertain, and that we move item 3D to directly after 3A. And so just so you know what that is, we are moving the potential acquisition of 880 Stone Pine Road to directly after the mid-year review, as I know we have some people in the audience to talk about that subject, so we're going to move it up in the agenda. Is there anything else any other council members want to do in terms of approval of the agenda?
Sounds good.
Cool. All right. Do I have to vote on that? Yeah. May I have a motion?
I move that we change the agenda per the mayor.
Second.
Cool. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No. All right, motion passes 5-0. Thank you. And then we will start off with public forum. This is the time period where people in the audience can come up. You fill out a blue card, which is over there if you'd like to talk about anything. And these are items that are usually not on the agenda. If there's an item that you want to talk about that is on the agenda, you wait for that item to come up, and then you submit a blue card. There is a timer right here. It's a 3-minute timer. We ask that you adhere to the guidelines. When the yellow light goes on, you have 30 seconds left. When the red light goes on, you must stop talking, and we'll move on to the next person. We look forward to hearing from the public. Thank you so much. And Jessica, you can start us off.
We have one public speaker, Crystalline Geet.
Did I do it? Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to give some chamber updates. So first and foremost, I would like to introduce council and staff to the new chamber development coordinator, Kevin Simmons. I'm so excited to introduce him to you guys because he's going to be my partner in good deeds, and we are going to do so much more good stuff out of the chamber because we're going to be doing everything together. So I'm very excited to introduce him to you. Would you like to say a word?
Not really.
Okay, so I'll be the talker. He'll be the workhorse. And we have upcoming the State of the Coast Side, which council will thankfully be a part of on March 11th at Mezzaluna Restaurant from 11:30 to 12:30. We'll be getting wonderful updates from all our municipalities. And then we also have Farm Day coming up on March 27th. So tickets are available online or in the chamber office. So please support Farm Day because that's like the best lunch in town. And I think that's all we've got going for the moment. So thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. Welcome. Welcome. We're excited to have you here. Did you move to Half Moon Bay?
Actually, I've been here all my life.
Cool. Awesome. Good hire. Do we have another speaker? Yeah.
Joaquin Jimenez.
Hello. Good evening. Is it on? Okay, good to go. Hey, I would like to share with you a little bit of something that I just did recently. I had the opportunity to visit the border, the U.S.-Mexican border. I was in Brownsville, Texas, to visit the families in the encampment in Matamoros, which is in the Mexican side. If you have an opportunity, please look into it. You know, I think our community needs to know more about what's going on at the border. And I'm going to tell you, it was heartbreaking. You know, those families, to see the children in fear. There's an article that eventually I would like to share with you. You know, I will send you an email with the link to this article. And it talks about what these families are going through. We were there we visited the camp 4 days. You know, we had the opportunity to spend time with the parents and listen to their stories. And so did from the children, you know, the stories of fear, but also hope. You know, they wrote some really nice letters to, believe it or not, to Mr. President, telling their story about where they're from, you know, what they're hoping, things that they actually had to go through to get to where they are right now. You know, so there's a lot of things happening at the border that our society is ignorant about. You know, but I will forward you that link. You know, you could please take a look at the article, and everything that says in the article is very true. You know, things that go unnoticed. It talks about murder, rape, robbery, assault, everything, human trafficking, which most of the people that are victims of this is the children. You know, every night the children go to sleep in fear. So that's something I would like to share with you eventually. You know, hopefully this week you get to please take a look at the article, and maybe we can get your support to do something about what's going on at the borders. Thank you.
Thanks for doing that work. All right. All right. We'll move on to proclamations and presentations, which I don't think we have any. And we can go into mayor's announcement of community activities and community service, which I do have a few things. So I don't know how many people in this room are familiar with NET. What does NET stand for?
Network engagement and transform.
So it's Network, Engagement, and Transform. The applications go live this Thursday, March 5th. It's a great program where you can learn about the various activities that the city engages in, how to get more involved in them. You spend some time with the city council members as well. And I believe there's free dinner involved in a couple of them as well. So if you're interested in all of them, the NET application goes live this Thursday, March 5th. And if you haven't done it yet, I highly recommend you do it. We do have two versions that we have an English version and a Spanish version as well. Number two, the Little League opening day is March 14th at 9 a.m. at Smith Field. I'm going to actually be throwing out the opening pitch. So it's kind of exciting. So I just wanted to announce that as Little League starts. Number three, the Sustainability Volunteer Fair is happening next Tuesday, March 11th from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Half Moon Bay Library. It's a great opportunity to learn about sustainability happening here in Half Moon Bay. Number four, the Community Recycling Day, which includes shredding, compost pickup, e-waste, is April 4th. 9 to 1 outside of the library. I'll read this one again because it's a super important day. So the Community Recycling Day, which includes shredding, compost pickup, and e-waste, is April 4th, 9 to 1 outside of the library. The compost pickup, it's a good one. It's nice to get free compost. Number five, Ocean View Park ribbon cutting will happen Wednesday, April 8th at noon. That's an exciting development there at the Ocean View Park, and that'll be complete, and we'll open it up April 8th. Number six, we're saving the date for Earth Day. It's coming up. Who knows what day Earth Day is in the audience? Boom, thank you. I'm glad. So, save the date, Earth Day. We are doing it April 18th at 11 a.m. to make sure people can show up on a weekend, so it's good. And then the last thing, there's a new program that just came out. I'm not sure if you heard about it, but if you didn't, I want people to know. There's this earthquake brace and bolt program. And there's a community outreach kit that was sent to me. There's $3,000 that you can get to brace your home for upcoming earthquakes. As an application, the due date for the program is March 19th. It's pretty easy to do if you're interested in it. You can go online and just Google it. We tried that today just to make sure it worked, but it's www.earthquakebracebolt.com.
And you can get free bracing?
You get $3,000 worth of free bracing. Up to. Yeah. I know. Pretty cool, right?
What's the website again?
It is www.earthquakebracebolt.com. So
Is it all one word?
all one word, earthquakebracebolt.com. And that's especially, I really wanted that to go out to our tremendous community of volunteers who are taking care of preparedness, emergency preparedness for the city. So get that word out the best you possibly can.
Mr. Mayor, we'll post it on e-news as well.
Cool. Thank you. Go ahead.
Spanish-speaking session, listening session?
Okay, I think that's being addressed, yeah. So let's move on to the mayor's announcements of community activities. Oh, we just finished that. Let's move on to the report out from the recent closed session meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The council met in closed session this evening to discuss one item that was conference with legal counsel existing litigation regarding the case City of Half Moon Bay versus Granada CSD and Montero WSD, and there is nothing to report out of closed session.
Excellent. Thank you, Catherine. And city manager updates the council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We have two updates tonight. I'll do the first one, and then Matthew Chittister will come up and make an announcement about our last and final listening session. So the comments that I want to make tonight are about the coronavirus. This has been a very hot topic for the last couple weeks for sure, but going back a couple months nationally, at the state level, regionally, and at the local level as well. So we felt that we should also make some comments and reinforce really many of the things that we're hearing and the public is hearing themselves and reading, but also try to help synthesize some of the information. I don't think there's a lack of information coming to us about what is known. There certainly is maybe a lack of information or communication and competence at higher levels. But in terms of the information that you can get now, it's pretty readily available. I'll say that just in the last 2 days, probably 8 or 9 different organizations sent me their version of a letter or a memo or tips or best practices. And I realize these all are not going out to the public because I'm the city manager. I get these kind of things. I got one from Cal Matters, a nonprofit. I got one from ICMA. The state Coastal Conservancy had a version, which Councilmember Ruddick sent me. And again, so I think what we can do is help to synthesize some of this information and present it locally. And so that's what I'll do right now. So here is some of the things we know that's happening at a local level, again, to fill in some of the details that people are reading and hearing. So San Mateo County, the Office of Emergency Services, has activated and opened their Emergency Operations Center. As you know, they have a brand new facility. They did the grand opening about 6 months ago. And they have decided to open that not 24/7, but during business hours. So this is a different kind of opening. It is still certainly an activation of their EOC, but what we're dealing with now is obviously a different kind of emergency than, say, an earthquake or a fire. And they have decided, given that they have this new facility, that it does provide them a better facility, a space to have these conversations among themselves internally, disseminate information, and get information out. So it seems like that was a pretty good decision on their part. We actually had Corey go there today. We called them and said, hey, would it be okay for us to send a staff member down there to kind of see what's going on, maybe attend one of your meetings, see what's going on firsthand. And so Corey was down there for a couple hours, and I think that was good for her to kind of see what they're doing at the county level and bring some of that information back to us. They have not declared an emergency. Other counties you may have read have. I believe San Francisco has. I heard Sonoma has today. I think Santa Clara has. San Mateo has not. We don't completely know what went into that decision making, but from what Corey said and what we've heard, they're trying to find the right balance and trying to make that right decision about doing all the right things, but not overreacting, but not underreacting. And so they have made the conscious decision at this point to not declare an emergency in San Mateo County. As shown in the second and third bullet points, they have set up a website. The CDC is posting daily websites, updates on their website. My last slide will have what we feel are the 5 best websites, and I believe we have handouts that people can grab for those websites. So like I said, we've been in contact with a lot of different folks. We were in contact with the county today. Corey went down there. Matthew reached out to some of our local partners, Senior Coastsiders, Cabrillo Unified School District, touched base with Sean. They're sending messages out to families themselves. The chamber, Kristlyn was just here, you heard from her. And we will continue to do that regularly. That's the best thing we can do to keep up with what others are doing so we can keep the information straight. So these next 3 slides are simply 3 slides that we pulled off the CDC website. We just wanted to give you a taste of what's on there. Again, we encourage the public to go to these websites and find their own information. And again, go to reliable sources where you're getting the best information possible. But we thought these were 3 good facts, so we wanted to just underscore them. Fact number 1, diseases can make anyone sick regardless of their race or ethnicity. So we thought that was a good point for everyone to remember. The coronavirus certainly knows no race. 2, the risk of getting the coronavirus, COVID-19 in the U.S. is currently low. This is where it does get tricky, and the more reading you do, the more you see different versions of different agencies and leaders and people and public health people on TV making different versions of this statement. And obviously this is what the public really wants to know. What are the risks? What are the percentages? Are the cases mild or severe? How many people, and so forth and so on. We're hesitating to go into those. There's a lot of statistics out there, but this is right off the CDC website. And this is, I think, a very important message. At this point, the risk is low, and that's a true statement. And then finally, fact number 3, someone who has completed quarantine or has been released from isolation does not pose a risk of infection to other people. This obviously is a question that a lot of people have been asking, and so the CDC put this up on their website. So this is a slide, again, that synthesizes information we've received from a variety of sources. You've read them yourself on the web, seen them on TV, heard about them. And these are obviously very good practices, and these bullet points are ones that are pretty much what you're seeing elsewhere. Cough or sneeze into a tissue, discard the tissue, wash your hands. That's even better than doing it into your elbow. Hands is even worse. Avoid contact with anyone sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you're sick. This is a message that's, I think, very important for City Hall, in any workspace, that people have the ability and have the freedom and know that they have an employer who makes it clear that they should not come into work, and they have the ability to do that. Disinfect frequently, touched objects and surfaces. And then this final one, there's been a lot of this about washing your hands and how to do it properly. I had conversations with multiple people today. I think Councilmember Ruddick said there's a video online that you can find that shows how to do it right. Another council member, it might have been Penrose, who mentioned she also saw something really good on steps to do it. And the message that besides doing it properly, I think that's also important, is it's better than hand sanitizers. That does not mean the hand sanitizers aren't good, but from what we have read and everything we've heard, not a substitute for washing your hands properly. But you're seeing those around, although I've heard stories that they're hard to get right now because people are buying the stores out on them.
And actually, the common wisdom of recent years has been that those things are bad because they reduce your immunity over time, right? So using them judiciously is really important. Yeah.
And then here are the websites I mentioned. Again, I think there's paper copies for anyone who wants those. Back there, I won't read the websites, but one is from CDC, of course, federal government, San Mateo County, the State Department of Public Health, and the World Health Organization. So these are the four obvious ones to go to, and so we have included these websites that will take you right to their information about the virus. And then the final comment I wanted to mention, back to my comment that I've been getting inundated with different communications from different entities. One I got today was interesting, and I'll just touch on it here. And when we get to the mid-year budget update, Lisa and Ken might also touch on it. But I did get a memo from the Silicon Valley Convention and Visitor Bureau today, which was interesting, and just read through that really quickly. I don't remember all the stats, but they were putting out stats to their members, and this I think probably what they put on their website, about the effect this is having on their industry. And they listed some conferences that were being canceled and the effect that the cancellation of those conferences and travel and so forth is having on hotel nights, which is a very important metric for their entity and for that industry. And so it is something important to watch, and we will continue to watch that as well. We are also a tourist town, and a lot of our revenue that we rely on is transiency occupancy tax. So you will be getting a mid-year update today on the budget. Lisa and Ken will be talking about the first half of the year, which is our stats through December 31st of this year, so it's a couple months lagged. So they will be showing stats about our sales tax, our property tax, our TOT. They're all looking pretty good. But again, this is something that we're going to be monitoring, and we just wanted to make that note. And I just thought it was really interesting when that landed in my inbox today, and I read some of the stats there. So that concludes my report on that. Before I turn it over to Matthew for the next update, I just want to open it up to any questions from the council.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that our non-English speakers in the community have access to the same information that English speakers have. So I don't know what we're doing in that area, but it would be good to do, I think, some outreach like to Moon Ridge. And I know there's a large Chinese-speaking community at the senior center as well. So I just want to make sure that people aren't feeling adrift and get the information.
Thank you, Councilmember Ruddick. I just want to say, Bob, thank you so much for this report out. We've been monitoring the situation very carefully. We've been looking at all the different websites. We've been gathering a lot of information. We don't want to over communicate, but we also wanted to make sure that everybody knew that we were on it, that we're paying attention to it, and that we are looking at it from multiple variation of inputs. So thank you. All right, Matthew?
Every time I hear that I'm not supposed to touch my face, I really, really want to touch my face. So we're not going to do that. So really quickly, I'll give you an update on our listening sessions for this year and our upcoming priority setting workshop. As you know, as part of our annual process as we prepare for the next fiscal year budget, We take time to reach out to the community, gather feedback from them on what their priorities are, what their thoughts, what their concerns are about the community. And that helps to inform you as you make decisions going forward on what you want us to focus on as staff and what the city should be focused on as a whole. And so one of the ways we do this is through our listening sessions. This is where we give our community an opportunity to sit in front of you all and just share their thoughts, and we take copious notes and try to synthesize those things into a good report that helps you make decisions later. So we've held 2 this year so far. The first was last Thursday. The senior co-siders graciously hosted us right before their lunch hour. It was a great session. We had a lot of people there, not just from the senior center, but there was lots of people coming in from the surrounding community. We got lots of great feedback, and we appreciated the senior co-siders for being such great hosts and making it really easy for us to gather that kind of feedback. This past Saturday, we were hosted at the library. Similarly, had a great turnout, and as you all know, got a lot of great feedback again. They were different sessions, which is always interesting. You hear different things from different groups of people depending on who can be there and when they can be there. Our final session is next Sunday, this coming Sunday, March 8th, from 1:30 to 3:30 in this room, and that will be held completely in Spanish. So we always try to provide translation. At the Senior Center on Thursday, we were in kind of preparing for the meeting. The Senior Center staff let us know that they have many Mandarin-speaking residents. And so we actually, for the first time, had a Mandarin translator, and he was quite busy. So it was good to know that, and we'll monitor that. You know, as demographics change and as our population changes, we need to be aware of the members of our community that need that kind of support. Saturday, we had Spanish translation available, and then this Sunday is kind of a reverse, where the meeting is held completely in Spanish and then translated into English for you as council members and those of us on staff that don't speak Spanish. And we hope this creates a safe and welcoming space for the members of our Spanish-speaking community to come and share their feelings about our community. So we're looking forward to hearing from them, again, this Sunday, 1:30 to 3:30, and that will wrap up our listening sessions, the formal listening session meetings. Additionally, for those that can't make those meetings, we have an opportunity for people to go online and submit feedback. So if people go to our website at halfmoonbaycity.com/citycouncil, they'll get information on you as council members, information on council meetings and our agendas, information on the strategic plan, which is where our priorities go. And most importantly, there's a listening session page and there's an online submission form. And we've had some pretty good response to that. So trying to provide as many opportunities for the community to provide their feedback as possible.
Matthew, that online piece, that's new, is it not?
No, we've done it in the past.
Yeah.
We've done it in the past, yeah. But I think we're getting better at promoting and getting the word out. I think in the past we got more emails than anything else, but this is definitely working this year, so we're excited. And then on Tuesday, March 10th in this room, we'll hold our priority setting workshop, and this is where you as council members have the chance to get some updates on the budget and what we're projecting in the future, updates on our current priorities, an update on what happened at the listening sessions and the feedback we received. There will be a public comment period. We're hoping to time that right around lunchtime so that people in the community can come and share if there's, again, just additional things they want to share. And then ultimately you'll have a chance to discuss and decide on future priorities for the city. So that's here from 11 a.m. to roughly 2 p.m. We could go longer if we need to, on Tuesday, March 10th, and public comment should be around noon. So looking forward to seeing the community there and preparing for another great year here in the city.
All right, thank you, Matt. Yeah, thanks. All right, from here we move on to the consent calendar. These are items that generally are not discussed unless anybody wants to discuss them, in which case we would pull an item. I'm looking for a motion now.
I move that we approve the consent calendar. Item 1A, waive reading of resolutions and ordinances. Item 1B, amendment to agreement with GSD Consulting to include additional services related to the implementation of the citywide enterprise resource planning system. Item 1C, Seahorse Ranch License Agreement. Item 1D, City Event Sponsorship Policy. Item 1E, Final Acceptance of the 2019 Sewer Manhole Rehabilitation Project, CIP Project 9026. And item 1F, a resolution recognizing the importance of the 2020 census.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, it passes, the consent calendar passes 5-0. And while we've got it, Willa, do you want to come up and say anything? I mean, this is your opportunity, Willa. Let's go.
They call it Super Tuesday.
Willa wanted more back and forth before this happens. So we know what we have to deal with her, so we just kind of made it easy. So it's
Thank you so much. And we're done here.
okay. Yep. We'll take a minute. All right, we're back in. Here we go. So we are moving on the ordinances and public hearings we talked about, so we're moving on past those. And we're going to the resolutions and staff reports. Item 3A we are going to start with, followed by item 3D. So item 3A is the mid-year review and adoption of resolution to adjust the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget.
Thank you, Mayor Eisen and council members. Tonight, Kenneth Stiles and I are here to bring you an update on the fiscal year 2019-20 mid-year budget review. Tonight, we will be giving you an overview of the budget and what it looks like, a financial status update of where the city is in terms of our expenditures and our revenues, adjustment recommendations that we are looking to make so that we can actually go through the rest of the year. And also, we're going to briefly speak about what it will look like as we move towards starting the process for the next year's 2021 fiscal year budget process. So tonight, our purpose is to update you and the citizens in attendance on the financial status of the city. We also know how important this is in terms of being a strong budgeting tool and in transparency so that our city finances are actually out there for the public and we're available to answer any questions. And last but not least, we also do want you to know that anything we recommend in terms of adjustments are based on material changes and the things that we actually need to progress to the end of the fiscal year. So with that, I am now going to turn it over to Kenneth, who will walk you through the financial status update and through the updates and the adjustments.
Kenneth, this is a very exciting moment. I'm excited. This is good. You ready for this?
I'm ready for this.
Here we go.
Here we go. We start with the actuals thus far in the general funds. As you know, the city's 75% of the city's revenues come from three main sources: TOT, property taxes, and sales taxes. This table highlights their performance from July 1st to December 31st, the first 6 months of the fiscal year. We have a budget column, that's the adopted budget. We have the actuals, what we've received so far. And the blue column is the percentage-wise of what we've received. And so the blue column is important because we look to see if we're hitting our benchmarks. You may ask, well, why is trans occupancy taxes at 41% and not 50%? That's because there is a bit of a lag, about a 2-month lag before we actually receive those monies. In that case, we compare it to what happened last year, that green column. So we received 42% last year, and this year we received about 41%. So it's tracking how we anticipated it, and it wasn't over budgeted or under budgeted. As Bob mentioned earlier, due to recent events, it would be amiss if we didn't talk about how TOT makes up about 40% of our revenues. It's a significant portion, and it's generated by tourism. So there's a question of how coronavirus or the fear of travel or any economic downturn affects our revenues. And that tourism also affects sales taxes. It's a bit of a broad question for tonight, but staff is preparing to look at those forecasts at the March 10th meeting for the strategic priority meeting. As I continue.
So let me, sorry, real quick. So just to clarify, so we're all on council. So we're going to be bringing up that issue in depth during our March 10th meeting.
Yes.
Because of the changes that I think we're going to foresee. So not tonight, but it is coming very soon.
I think it's going to be really important to, I don't know if we might do outreach to the hotel folks, but just to get an idea of the magnitude of the impact, I think would be helpful by the 10th. Of course, who knows? I mean, things are changing. Yeah.
And Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Ruddick, members of council, yeah, I mean, a lot of it is doing our best to look into the crystal ball, and Lisa and Kenneth will do that using all the best information they can gather that's available to them before the 10th. We'll then present it, similarly to how we did last year, and quite frankly, similarly to how most cities do it. We'll look out 5 years. And obviously what we're talking about now is an event that's happening right now in real time, and we won't have great information. So it's one thing to kind of look out 5 years and say, is the economy going to continue at a 2%, can we expect 2% growth from our various taxes? Do we see a downturn coming? But with this, it could make for an interesting graph. I think what we'll try to do is even go a step further and just assume kind of not a worst case scenario, but a scenario that could happen. What would happen, for example, if the major revenue sources went down by 10%? What would that look like? And the real important question then, more about, are we good at predicting or not, is what impact would that have on our services? If we had to only receive 10% of what we got the previous year, what kind of cuts might we have to make? And so we'll put some thought into that and hopefully be able to present some stuff that can kind of promote a nice conversation on the 10th.
Again, that's a great answer, but March 10th discussion. For the time being, proceed. Go ahead.
Okay. So property taxes are at 52% in line with last year. Sales taxes are right at the even 46%. So the high-level summary is that our major revenues are tracking as anticipated.
So are you impressed with your forecasting? I mean, that's pretty impressive that we're pretty much exactly in line with what you expected to be. That's usually rare, I think. But no, what's your perspective on that?
I think it's a fair forecasting. I can't take credit because I wasn't here, but city staff did an excellent job with.
Well, this is the expectation moving forward now. You're setting a high bar, so I'm just putting you on notice. Here we go.
So we talk about expenditures, the other side of it. So our operating expenditures are under 50%. So our public safety, our administrative services department, our public works, the operating day-to-day expenses are underneath 50%. So at a high level, our budget to actuals are tracking appropriately. And the last point is just a note that during the course of the year, council had some budget amendments that they approved, and those numbers are reflected in this review. So we start with the adjustments. The first one, staff was awarded $60K in grants for the CAP outreach. That's the climate action adaptation pilot program. We were awarded that, and we've already received those monies, so we want to adjust the revenues for that. Recommending a decrease of $163K for AB 939 fees. Instead of these fees, we are receiving administrative support fees that are accounted for in a different budget line.
So AB 939 would be related to waste collection, no?
That's correct.
Yes. Okay.
On the third point, we're recommending a decrease of $38,000. In prior practice, we were accounting for revenue for the Pumpkin Festival permits as a tracking mechanism, but then turn around and we would waive those fees. We're recommending to remove those books from our books altogether. And then the last item is an accounting cleanup item. In the prior year for the budgeting, staff had wanted to clear out the library operation fund and had estimates of what we thought we were going to have available to transfer back to the general fund. Now that we know the actuals, we want to adjust down to account for that properly. For the expenditures, there's only two items. The CAP outreach, we want to increase expenditures by $60K to match the revenue that we've already received. That's so that staff can utilize those monies in the current fiscal year. The last item is budget neutral, but it's something that council should explicitly approve of, and that's the creation of a position, an accounting technician in the finance department, and we have found a way to fund it through moving budget within that in those line items. So those are all the adjustments for the general fund. The next question is, what are the effects? This is a chart that we've grouped the expenses in three categories. We have salaries and benefits, other operational expenses and capital transfers. Our salaries will increase by about $82,000. That's for the accounting technician. Other operating expenses will increase by $60,000. That's that CAP outreach grant. And capital transfers, that $100,000 was previously approved by council for the Carter Park. When you consider revenues and expenditures, you think about how that affects our fund balance. At the time of budget adoption, we had a surplus of $30,000, meaning that we had about $30,000 before we actually get to reinvest that and then some into our capital infrastructure. If the revised budget is approved, that surplus will dip down into $84,000, and that's mostly due to the revenue adjustments and the additional expenditures.
So just to clarify, our surplus goes from 300,000 to 84,000.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So this is another way to look at fund balances. This chart was in our original budget book, and we've updated it with the most recent numbers. You can tell by our beginning fund balance. At time of adoption, we thought we had $10 million to start with. Due to our audit and our CAFR, we now know that we actually had $10.9 million at the beginning of the fiscal year. And when accounting for all the adjustments that we are recommending, our ending fund balance would be about 7.9, with $640,000 undesignated. And staff intends to use those monies and program them into next year's budget. So we start talking about other funds. These mostly relate to capital projects. The first item is staff anticipated that we will receive about $4.6 million in grant funding this year. We're thinking that it's going to come into next year, so we want to reallocate that and adjust down. We've received additional grant revenue, $142K for the Main Street Bridge. The Parks Development revenue decreases by about $91,000 due to the closure of the Library Operation Fund. And then the last item is a FYI item, in that we want to, originally we had a IT budget in two spots, in the general fund and in the internal service funds. We want to consolidate that all into one in the internal service fund. So for accounting purposes, it would come in at, it would look like a revenue, and in the expenditure side, it would be the exact same amount. For expenditures, Carter Park, last fiscal year, we had allocated some monies and they were not spent. Staff is requesting that the unspent monies from last fiscal year is used for this fiscal year, $138,000. Kelly Avenue and Highway 1, it was budgeted for $100,000 next year. We would like to move that up into the timeline and get that done this year. And then expenditures, we want to decrease down by $4.4 billion, because since we're not getting those grant monies this year, we want to also drop down that budget till next year. It should be noted that staff does intend to award and go to bid for a project, but we're not anticipating that those cash is actually going to be expended in this fiscal year. Also, we want to transfer monies between Wave Crest Water Main Project to the Smithfield site of $100,000. And then the last item is what I mentioned earlier about consolidating the IT budget. With everything said and done, here are the fund balances grouped by fund type. The general fund will end somewhere around, we're estimating at $7.9 million. One number that you may have questions on is the total of all the funds. So at the beginning of the year, we had at the very bottom $60.7 million, and we're projecting at the end of this year would be $36 million. That big decrease is because the city has finally paid off their judgment obligation bonds of $11 million. So those are finally off of the books. So we covered a lot, and the summary is that the 1920 budget continues to be on track. The general fund revenues will decrease by about 155, and expenditures will increase by about 160. The revised projected general fund balance would be about 7.9, with 640,000 undesignated that staff intends to program into next fiscal year.
And so moving forward, as you probably know, the mid-year budget process actually truly begins our next year's budget process. So we use this analysis to actually start gathering the information and gathering the numbers. We will continue the process of using a zero-based methodology for our budgeting. And also, it continues to be a collaborative effort among council, staff, and citizens, of course, with, of course, starting with the strategic priority setting on March 10th. And, of course, we're going to end tonight, before we take questions, on asking you to adopt the attached resolution to adjust the fiscal year 2019-20 operating and capital budget. Thank you.
Excellent presentation, thank you. Are there any clarifying questions from council? Councilmember Ruddick?
No, I will just say that the City Council Finance Subcommittee met with staff a couple of weeks ago and, got the lowdown on here and had our questions basically answered then, and not much has changed, and things are looking good. And appreciate the nice, clear presentation of the numbers and the data. So.
Excellent. Anyone else? Comment? All right, can we entertain a motion?
I move that we adopt a mid-year review resolution to adjust the fiscal year 2019-20 budget.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you so much for that great presentation.
Thank you.
Well done. All right, next we are moving the order around a little bit again. So we are taking item 3D, which is the potential acquisition of 880 Stone Pine Road, Half Moon Bay.
Alrighty then.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor, honorable council members. Glad to be here in front of you. Matthew Chittister, your Deputy City Manager, and Lisa Lopez, our Admin Services Director, will remain up here with me for this item. So over the last several months, we've met in closed session to talk about this item, and we've reached a point where we're ready to move forward with it. So just a little bit of background. We're talking about a property just a little bit northeast of here, 880 Stone Pine Road. It's depicted on this map by the orange and blue star. It's just south of 92 and just east of the end of Stone Pine Road, and it's where our current corporation, our maintenance yard, is located. By way of background, this was a property that the city actually acquired in 2004. And it was acquired for just over $3 million and financed by Peninsula Open Space Trust. And it was originally acquired with one of its main intents of becoming a major city park. And so there were plans and designs to do ball fields and picnic areas, and it was a really activated park area. And ultimately the home of our corporation yard, which are often adjacent to a big city park because that's where a lot of the maintenance goes. The plans for that park, as the public got involved and started to review those plans, were eventually shelved. And then, of course, with the financial downturn and the financial issues the city faced in the late 2000s, the city actually went into default on its loan for the property in 2009. And Post took title to the property, which was in the loan documents with. But still a good working relationship, and the city had already started establishing its maintenance yard on the property. So Post allowed the city to remain there as stewards of the property, to manage the property, the open space there, and use it as a corporation yard. A few years ago in 2018, Post made it clear to us through a letter and a presentation at a council member that they were ready to sell the property. They were no longer interested in holding this property, but would give the city an opportunity to acquire it. They recognized its importance to us. At that time, we also entered into a more formal lease agreement that included lease costs. So we pay about $30,000 a year for the use of this property and continuing to be stewards of it. And that lease increases 10% per year. So right now it's a fair lease, but over time it could actually flip and be something that would be above market. I think most importantly is there's a big need for a corporation yard. And it's articulated pretty well in the staff report, but I don't think staff can stress how important a corporation yard is to the core operations of a city. You know, some of our main functions are to maintain our roads, our sidewalks, our streets, our parks, community spaces, our buildings, and a corporation yard is where all the equipment is stored. It's where when there's a major project where you're able to store materials and stage materials. Our corporation yard serves as an important emergency preparedness location. We have trailers out there for emergency preparedness. It would allow staff to operate over an extended period of time during an emergency. And ultimately, it's a really important place for us to keep our assets, our vehicles, and our equipment. And without ownership of this property, we've been unable to really move forward with any important improvements to protect those assets. So currently we use a house that was existing on the property as an office for our maintenance staff, and it's functional, it works well. We've got a nice conference room out there and a couple of offices, a small shower, and lots of outdoor space to park vehicles and place containers. But the indoor spaces there are not really adequate for our needs. And so our vehicles sit outside. As you know, last month, one of our vehicles was actually stolen from the yard because it was simply a single gate. We did recover that vehicle, which we're happy to say, and it remains in operation today, so we got lucky on that point. But it just really heightened the fact that we need to do more out there, and by owning the property, that gives us the opportunity to make those improvements. Additionally, our vehicles sit outside, and in our weather that we have here on the coast side, that is not good for our vehicles and equipment. So we really need to be able to create a facility where we can store our vehicles safely, securely, and out of the elements. A little more detail here of the property. So to your left, you see this Cypress Cove townhome development. And right down the middle of that is Stone Pine Road, which is our main access point. And then you see on the property outlined in green, it's a 20-acre property. And there's a couple of roads out there that allow us access. And then on the northeastern end of the property near Spanish Town is where we store our vehicles, and the offices are for Public Works. In the upper left-hand corner, there's kind of a dull brown area. That's a former ag pond that it's still a wet area, and so there's some environmental impacts there. And then on the southeastern part of the property, we're bordered by Pilarcitos Creek, which we know is a really, really important environmental and biological asset here in Half Moon Bay. Interestingly enough, on the northeastern corner of the property, we believe that the first driveway in and out of Spanish Town actually is on site for this, and future use of this site could allow us to use that as a right-in, right-out access point as well, which helps in emergencies. It could also alleviate some of the traffic through the Stone Pine development, which I think would be of benefit to the residents there. So as we've worked over the last year and a half with Post, the first place we started was with an appraisal, and the appraisal came in at $2,180,000, and ultimately that was the negotiated price. We couldn't pay more than that, and Post wasn't going to go lower, and so that was an easy negotiation. The more details that are included in the purchase and sale agreement. Once consummated, in order to open escrow, we would need to make a $20,000 initial deposit, which would be credited towards the purchase price, and under certain conditions, refundable if we didn't consummate the transaction at the end. Additionally, if, and at this point, I think it's a pretty reasonable expectation, we will not have closed escrow by July 1st. We will need to make another $100,000 deposit in good faith, but it would be treated the same as the original deposit credited toward the purchase. We have a 180-day contingency period for the city to perform all the due diligence it needs to do, and I'll go into some details on that on the next slide. Certainly, when we complete our due diligence, we can close escrow sooner, and I think our goal is to complete the acquisition sometime this summer, but we have until the fall to complete the sale or the acquisition. Some of the additional terms that were negotiated into this purchase and sale agreement, and this was really based on the history of the acquisition previously and our relationship with Post and making sure that this was really a mutually beneficial transaction. There is language in the purchase and sale agreement that if something were to change in the zoning or the use of the property that would actually increase the value of the property, we would have to share in that increased value with Post. We all believe that this is a very, very unlikely scenario, not in the plans of the city, but it's some security that Post wanted to have in the agreement, and we ultimately were able to agree to. Additionally, there will be land set aside for a public use trail across this property. On the next slide, I'll show you, this is kind of a drawing of some of the environmental areas on the property. So you see the areas in purple, those are riparian areas for the creek and the old ag pond. And then the pink dashed line is the 50-foot buffer from Pilarcitos Creek, which we wouldn't be able to do any sort of development in that 50-foot buffer. Additionally, you'll see to the southeast of the southeastern roadway is a green hatched area. We're calling that in the purchase and sale agreement the future trail development area. It's very generic. It's an area that we know probably doesn't have much utility for the city anyways, and so it just gives us a lot of room to work with Post to identify where a trail could be placed. Ultimately, once the alignment has been identified, then we'll actually have it's surveyed, get a property description for the exact alignment of the trail, and that's what will be either recorded in an easement or just preserved by the city.
Matthew, is there a buffer around the old ag pond?
There should be. So one of the due diligence areas that we'll be working on is a wetlands delineation, and that will identify exactly what wetland areas we have, what we have out there, and identify the buffer areas around those as well. So as part of our due diligence, we'll get a better understanding of what areas of this property truly can't be used for the yard and for any other type of development, and really will be preserved as open space into perpetuity. Going back to the purchase and sale agreement, there's also language about collaborative use that once the city has figured out what it needs for its public purposes as a corporation yard, and we've identified where the trail is going to be, that any remaining space that is not within a buffer area that could be used for some sort of public purpose, that we'll work with Post and other nonprofits to see if there's uses that would be in alignment with its historic use as an ag property. So some of the things we've talked about are, possibly a 4-H or a community garden or some sort of co-op garden out there that just preserves that heritage as an agricultural site and makes good use of otherwise land that would otherwise go unused. If donations are received for the development of the trail, Post has reserved naming rights for that trail. Those naming rights are subject to approval by the council, so it's kind of a 50-50 split on figuring that out, but my guess is that we all have the same goals and the same focus, and likely anything that they're suggesting would work for us as well. And then those all will be memorialized within a memorandum of agreement that it would expire 10 years after close of escrow. The final additional term is that the city will make sure it recognizes post's efforts to preserve this property as open space, and especially the areas near the creek, and that would remain on the deed into perpetuity. And you've seen other sites around town where you can see that open space has been acquired and preserved by post. And so that's something we'll do, not just with signage, but I think in any materials and any discussions we have about this property in the future. So talking about due diligence, we'll have 180 days after we enter into the purchase and sale agreement. We're already working on a biological resource evaluation, just again to understand where the sensitive habitat is on this property and understanding what those resources are and what protections need to be in place. Wetland delineations, looking for different delineators of potential wetlands here, and then identifying the buffers to understand what really is usable and not usable on this property. Typical of any property acquisition, we'll do at least a phase 1 hazards report. A firm will look at the history of the use of the site and see if there's any type of use that would lead us to believe that there's any sort of environmental issues from previous uses. That could lead to what's called a phase 2, which is where they'll actually go in and do soil testing and really understand what's going on the property. An ALTA survey will just help us understand any easements and other issues that might exist on the site that we're not aware of at the time. We will go to the Planning Commission for a finding of general plan consistency, and we believe that the current use is within the reasonable use of the property historically and within the zoning for the property. And then a CEQA evaluation, and we believe that this is exempt from CEQA, and we'll process that paperwork for the current and ongoing use. Any changes to use, the public use trail, anything like that will require its own CEQA evaluation at that time. So I'm going to turn the time over briefly to Lisa to talk about funding options, because Post is not going to give this to us for free. So Lisa, I'll turn the time over to you.
Thank you. So our finance staff has already begun researching options in the way we would recommend that the city move forward in financing. So we're looking at a purchase price of 2.2 almost, and an additional $1 million to begin work out there to actually make the land usable for our corporation yard. We have a couple of options already that actually are very viable for the city, which include looking at a cash payment, which unfortunately means drawing on reserves, which, again, even though that's an option, it's not necessarily something that we would recommend. And it also would also include the loss of investment income. The way we're looking, and we're still pursuing options and researching, but we're thinking low-cost, short-term financial bank loan may be the best way for the city to go. We would, right now in our research, we found that we can look at anywhere between 2 to 4% for our interest rates, and it would obviously strengthen Half Moon Bay's credit rating, and of course, it would maintain our liquidity, so those are right now what we're looking at in terms of funding options. We want to really kind of maintain control and recommend options that won't see us too far out in the future. And this will actually be a good bridge to the future when we decide if we have actually bigger projects or more funding that we're looking at.
Thank you, Lisa. So that extra $1 million that we're talking about there really is to make immediate improvements around safety, security, and protection of our assets, and then also to begin the long-range planning process for the property. It's really hard to make decisions about how and where we lay out a corporation yard and what improvements we need without going through a process. So we believe that that funding would get us pretty far down the road with those items. So with that, obviously we'll take questions, but our recommendation is that, one, you adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute the purchase and sale agreement. But two, we're looking for some direction from you as we pursue funding options for the acquisition of the property, whether you prefer us to really pursue cash funding through our own fund balance or pursuing bank loans in the future. And of course, if we pursue a bank loan or cash, those will be brought back to you in the future through the budget process and for your final decision.
All right, thank you for that presentation. To council, council member, oh yeah.
I'm so sorry. I did want to recognize Dan Olstein. He's the land program director for Post, and he's the person that has slogged through this process with us, and we've spent a lot of time together, and Post just wanted to share a few words, if you don't mind, before we get into our discussion.
No, please.
Sorry.
No problem. Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, Mayor and council members. Dan Olstein, Director of Land Programs and Stewardship at Post. Yeah, I just wanted to take the opportunity to express my appreciation for the leadership of the council, city manager, and in particular to Matthew and his team for working with us on this negotiation. I think, as you've heard, has gotten us to a really good place in terms of meeting our mutual goals. From Post perspective, in addition to seeing this land transferred over to the city for the public purposes here, our main goals were to make sure that the sensitive resources on the property, in particular the riparian areas and the riparian buffer, were protected in perpetuity, to achieve the to maintain the potential for that future public use, as well as preserving the opportunity for kind of honoring the historical use of the property and agriculture. So we're really, really happy to be here tonight, hitting this milestone, and looking forward to working, hopefully, assuming approval goes through, with staff to get this completed in the next 6 months. So thanks for the time. Thanks, Matthew, for all your hard work on this.
And thank you as well, because I know you put in some hours on this one, so we appreciate it. So any clarifying questions from council before we go to public comment?
Matthew, I'm assuming that the courtyard would more or less stay where it is now. Is that right?
I think in general, that's the area of the property that remains available and usable. Likely, we would orient closer to the highway and away from the creek and allow the areas closer to the creek to go back to kind of their natural state. And there's quite a bit of land close to the highway that would allow us, and it's nice flat land that would allow us to really lay out a great yard. So we've already engaged an architect just to start kind of envisioning what this could look like. And then obviously, if we move forward, we'll really delve into what our needs are long-term and what we can do in the short term to start accommodating those and start making those improvements.
Councilmember Reddick, do you have questions?
Are there other speakers that we want to hear from? Is there anybody?
We do have a public card, yeah.
We do have a public card, okay. Yeah, I'll reserve my remark for after that, yeah.
Vice Mayor Brownstone? You're good? Oh, okay. Harvey, you good with your questions? Yeah. Awesome. Can we proceed to public comment?
Lenny Roberts.
Good evening. This is on, I guess. It doesn't have to have a light. Okay. I'm Lenny Roberts, speaking for Green Foothills. We have a new name now. And I just wanted to say this is quite a happy occasion, I think, considering the long and rather interesting history of this negotiation between the city and Post. It's been a long time. 2004 was when it started, I think. And just a couple of observations about the property. It did have, when the city acquired it, a working system of water that was being used for the nursery operation. It has a well and the ag pond that was pumping up to the ag pond, but the city neglected to keep that maintained. So I don't know what the status is of that, but it does have the ability to provide water from the site and use the ag pond, which is also habitat. So it's going to be interesting to see what the BRE shows today, but I know it has been identified as habitat for aquatic amphibian species. And also there's a potential corridor from the ag pond down to the creek across the property, which I know in the LCP update was talked about having to maintain that area free from vehicle traffic. So it'll be interesting to see how you move forward on the planning for the project. Also, just wanted to mention that in addition to the riparian corridor and the buffer, the area along the creek, there is another constraint, and that's the the mapped dam inundation zone from the dam on Pilarcitos Creek. If it were to fail, it would inundate some of this corridor adjacent to the creek. And that's another constraint that you're going to want to make sure you're, not putting buildings in the way there. And I do hope you do some sensitive architecture for the courtyard, because it is within it's a pretty scenic area, and it's kind of the entry to Half Moon Bay. So it'd be nice to have something that's, consistent with the quality of the rest of the town. Thank you. The city, pardon me. Thank you.
Very good comments. Love it. Thank you. Back to council. Councilwoman Ruddick?
Yes, I think this is a good investment. I've been sort of involved intermittently in this tortuous process of the last 16 years, so it's good to finally, be on the path to a resolution. One good thing is, I've mentioned during our local coastal program update meetings that the city has very little land that's zoned for public facilities, for public uses. And we talked about it very recently at our joint meeting with the Planning Commission. So I think being in control of a property where we have courtyard facilities that could actually be improved upon, is really excellent. And, I was on the council a long time ago, and we were talking about what to do about a courtyard then, and the project is still, not with us. So this is a real, milestone, I think, for us. And then I just want to say that, so Post is not just a landowner, Post here on the coast is a partner, right? There will be other interactions with Post on other properties and as part of our planning. And it's not just about resource conservation, but it's about, access, and it's about, our economy. That relationship has, offers, real positive opportunities for our economy. So I think it's important that we went through this process and did it right, and look forward to more positive interactions with Post in the future. But Post does good work, and they're a partner, and I think we have to keep that in mind, with this transaction. So count me happy.
Not an easy feat. This is good.
Yeah.
All right. Just out of curiosity, do you have another public comment card? Do you want to go to that first, and then we can continue?
Mark McRae.
Council, Mayor, hello. I live at 21 Aaron Lane, which is at the end of Stone Pine Road. I love it when you're going to have a consolidation yard. I think it's grand. You got one now. It obviously needs a lot of improvement. I'm all for it. You got a creek over here. It's grand. 92 over here. What I'm worried about, because I'm a property owner, is this rather open and ubiquitous phrase of public access. Now, I hope that doesn't mean a park, because that's going to be trash, litter, crime, corruption. Let's just call that what it is. But if you're going to have a trail, where's it going to start? At Mariners Church or and then wind its way around? And that's probably 10 years down the road, I bet. I mean, unless you're going to make it in the next 2 years. But I also heard that the land, because it was an agricultural, farm, that it's just polluted with fertilizers and all kinds of chemicals. I don't know if that's still true or not, but that's going to be a major problem. But me, on a very selfish level, I hope that there's not going to be, this major influx of traffic in and out of there, because it would be a disaster, and then you'd have to control it, and it's a two-lane street, and you better have some police there, and stop signs and stop lights and everything else. That's my personal pitch. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think you made some excellent points, and Matthew, you want to respond to that?
Sure. As we state, our plan is to use it how we've been using it. When we talk about public access, we're talking about passive access. We're talking about probably what's already happening there. People out, walking through the nature, maybe walking their dog on a leash, enjoying the scenery and the environment there. This is not something we're looking at for an active park space. So.
I just want to comment about that. So all you got to do is go on to Google and find that proximity to parkland, whether it's active or passive, increases your property values significantly. There's no other finding. That's the finding. Parks improve property values, among other things. They improve community health, community well-being, et cetera. So I don't want to give parks a bad name here, and I don't want to commit today that, I won't have a community garden there or some other low-impact use, because the community has many needs and limited areas where we can realize them. So, but I just don't want that going to the record, that parks are litter and crime and all that stuff. They increase the values in the community. That's all I'm going to say.
So you're saying this guy should be fortunate? You're increasing you're putting money in his pocket?
That's exactly right.
All right, I like it. This is good. Lucky man. It's good. Council Member Rarbach.
I'm thrilled that we're going to finally acquire this property. In the past, the city has been, I don't know how to say this judiciously, but we've screwed Post. And it's time that we acknowledge that we work with them, and as Debbie has said, partner with them, because their heart's in the right place. They want to do the right thing. And I think we finally should acknowledge that it's time that we partner with a wonderful organization that does great work for the public. So that's my 2 cents.
Councilwoman Penrose?
Yeah, I am very interested in the idea of a building to protect our vehicles. I see what's happening at the sewer plant. We are constantly replacing vehicles because there is no place for them to be except out in the rain, out in the elements. And we spend a lot of money when we buy a vehicle for this city. And I'd like us to look at getting on that, making it attractive, maybe a cottage style or mission style courtyard building. But yeah, I'm excited about that. It also is in line with our sustainability policy. Anything we do needs to be sustainable, and just parking trucks is not a sustainable practice.
Excellent comments. And Vice Mayor Brownstone?
Yeah, having looked at all the history of this, I really do thank Post for their forbearance and patience with the city in reaching the conclusion that we've come to now. Had a quick question about the bank loan in terms of what that might look like. Just a sense of how long a term bank loan you were thinking about when you've been shopping this around, and some of the numbers around that.
Unfortunately, I don't have specific numbers, but when we were just inquiring, we were looking at anywhere from 5 to 10 years, very short term, so that we can move quickly. And we were, as I mentioned before, looking at this as a bridge. So ultimately, we would need to find more financing if we were going to do much more thorough development on the land, so.
And that would be for $3 million, let's say, over 10 years. and maybe having to pay with interest at 2 to 4%. I'm just throwing numbers, 320, 25,000 a year, something like that. So good. I mean, that just helps us think about what the budgeting looks like. Great. Thank you.
Bob, why the face? Go for it.
My comment is to both to Councilmember Penrose's point and the point that Councilmember Brownstone just made. So first with Councilmember Penrose's point, absolutely we want to design practical and aesthetically pleasing public works yard. No doubt about it. We'll look at a variety of options, keeping the existing house, not keeping the house, various options for how the buildings are situated on the land, coverage, a shop for vehicles, all that stuff. And to that, I just want to point out, and some of the styles you mentioned, we'll certainly look at making it very attractive. To that, I just also want to remind the council that $1 million figure is a pretty rough, I would say, back of the napkin stab. We have not done any detailed estimating on what the public works yard that you kind of just drew out for us would cost. This was to get us going. And that feeds into the second point that Lisa and Councilmember Brownstone just made when she said that this would be short-term, possibly bridging. So yeah, that's the idea here, is that even if we knew today that maybe the public works yard of our dream was more of a $3 to $4 million project, we're not possibly ready to recommend that much of a debt right now. The goal here is to buy the property. And the $1 million was a stab to get the improvements going. But to her point about a short-term loan possibly, the day could come where we come back before council and work here could be part of a larger package with some other capital projects that are very important to the council, where we would do a larger scale borrowing. And those can be more complex. There's different options available to us. And if we did something longer term, then that would probably be usually around 20 years. But yeah, that was the point, was to do something that gets us the property and gets us going, and that's what she meant by that. So just to answer your point on what we'd be looking forward to down the road.
Councilwoman Penrose?
Yeah, so this extra $1 million that we're talking about, I'm not sure I understand exactly how that money is going to be used, and if we're going to be taking a loan out and paying interest on it, even if it's low interest loan, I'd like to have a clear idea of how that was going to be spent. If we're not going to be able to do anything in the Corp Yard for another 5 years, maybe now is not the time to be paying interest on that $1 million.
Sure, and I'm sorry if I gave that false impression. I see the project in phases. I think Mr. Dowdy has had conversations with Matthew and Lisa about like what it would take to make it operational now. So they're looking at that. Like he said, he's hired an architect. I just didn't want to hedge our bet. Anything we bring forward to you in terms of how we ultimately are planning to do this, we'll have all those details answered. We don't have all the answers to your questions right now. Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? What's our budget looking like when we come back in June? Could we possibly pay for it in cash and then come back later? What are the real cost estimates, and could it be phased so that we do $1 million now and then come back later and do something more substantial? We just don't have the answers to those questions, but I just wanted to leave all those options open because we don't know what we don't know yet. And so the $1 million was, okay, let's prepare for that, and when we come back to you, we'll let you know what we can actually do come June.
Sounds good.
All right, very good. I am excited to make this happen. The architecture piece, I think, is paramount. It's a funny thing to talk about, but it is the absolute entryway to our town, and you can look over and see. So to make that in correct accordance with what we want and taking that into account, luckily we have an architectural review committee, so hopefully they'll be a part of that process. And then also, if we need to put the buildings up, a feet or two from the ground to protect in case the flood were to happen. That might be an interesting way to go about dealing with some of the other things that you talked about. And in terms of funding options, the Fed just lowered interest rates today. I think they're going to be going down further. So we might be, depending on when, yeah, pretty much. So when we are going through that process, I want to take that into consideration strongly. But in terms of buying the property and following through with it right now, I'm all in. And thank you, Post, again, for going through this process with us for so many years. I am excited to put this to a happy ending. So with that being said, I'll look for a motion.
I would like to move A, that we adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a purchase and sale agreement with Peninsula Open Space Trust to acquire property located at 880 Stone Pine Road for $2,180,000, and B, to direct the city manager to pursue funding options for the acquisition of the property and to make initial improvements related to safety and security, to develop a master plan for the use of the site, and to obtain land use entitlements for the long-term use of the property and present options to council with the fiscal year 2020-21 recommended budget.
Second.
May we do a roll call vote? Yeah.
Councilmember Penrose?
Aye.
Councilmember Rohrbach?
Yes.
Councilmember Reddick?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brownstone?
Yes.
Mayor Eisen?
Yes.
Motion carries.
We think it deserves an applause. Here we go. For the two of you out there, clap with us. This is good. Thank you. All right, we are on to item 3C. We're talking about adopt the City of Half Moon Bay Sanitary Sewer Management Plan update. 3B.
3B.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're on the update on the fiscal year 2019-2020 capital improvements project. Thank you. Yeah, at some point.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. I will be brief and then hand it over to Maz, who is the real hero here. But that being said, I'm pleased to come here tonight with Maz to just give you an update on the status of the capital improvement program and the projects. Every year we come and talk about that we were a bit overzealous, and this is a very robust program. I'll remind you and say those same words again. However, I'm extremely pleased with the work effort that's been put in by our staff, by all of the staff, including finance and admin staff, who make all of this happen in very challenging times and work there. We are also, and Maz will speak to it, in challenging times, just sometimes finding contractors willing to bid for work. Sometimes our projects are relatively small. We think that they're great projects, but we're just struggling with that, and we can speak a little bit more to that. But overall, we're extremely happy, and I think you'll be happy, and the community will be, most importantly, happy with the work effort that's ongoing and will be completing in many instances. I also would point out that it was pointed out that I forgot when I was transferring tables that I did not put the Parks and Rec, or the Parks side of the table in your staff report. So I apologize for that. Maz will cover some of the projects in there, and we can certainly update you with the whole package on that. And I apologize. That was an error on my part. So Maz, thank you.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're going to be touching a little bit on our CIP program, some of the delivery challenges, as John mentioned, and a status update on some of the key projects that we've been working on and next steps moving forward. As some of you may know, our capital improvement program is broken up into 8 different categories. I won't read them here, but they're listed up on the screen. For 2019-20, the current fiscal year capital improvement budget, we are expecting about $15.5 million of overall for the funding needs. And for the 5-year projection of our current CIP, we identified approximately $84 million in city capital needs, just to give a little reference on the costs of these projects in the program. So briefly, I'll talk a little bit about the project delivery challenges. It's a price that comes with the picturesque setting that we are in, from the habitats, the coastal zone, and some of the agency coordination that needs to occur, but also the bidding environment. And there's some specific examples on projects that I'll mention as we go through the presentation. So jumping into our first category, the stormwater improvements, a couple of projects I wanted to highlight on. The picture on the left is a picture of the Kelly Highway 1 Drainage Improvement Project. This project was completed in January, and what it did was capture the flows that were actually migrating through the Career Unified School District property, as well as Kelly Avenue, flooding residents and businesses along the way. Happy to report that the couple of storms that we did have this winter season, it did show improved capture of the stormwater flow and very little on-street runoff on Kelly as a whole. Really, the only thing we noticed as far as that stormwater was surface runoff in the immediate vicinity. So good news is it's functioning properly, and we'll keep looking at it.
I like the way that one looked too. The green and the whole piece, and it improved the visual aspect of that area. So well done.
Thank you. The next project is our Seymour Ditch Erosion project. I just wanted to touch on this one a little bit. The project had some temporary improvements that were completed a couple of years ago. We've been monitoring and looking for ways of enhancing those. We do have a requirement to do a final project, but the challenging part is looking at the hard improvements versus the more environmentally friendly improvements. And so we've been monitoring and looking and making sure that we're not increasing the issue of erosion. We're also working with our stakeholders, Coastside Land Trust, Post, Resource Conservation District, as well as the Army Corps of Engineers. There is a potential, we're going to have a site visit during this month from Army Corps of Engineers. There's a potential program where we would be able to get some support from Army Corps of Engineers to identify a restoration project for the Wave Crest site. And in this picture here on the right, it's in the background. And so what we're kind of looking at.
I can't see that.
Yeah. It's in the background of the picture on the right. And what we're looking at doing is restoring some of the existing stormwater features that were there prior to man-made changes. And with that, we're looking at hopefully reducing the amount of stormwater flow into the channel, and thereby looking at possibly reducing our project costs. The next category is our economic development area. This one is a relatively small category. A couple of projects to update on. The general plan, local coastal plan. We've had a robust public process, and we're really excited to be bringing this to the City Council in the near future. Our planning department staff has been doing an excellent job working through this with and a lot of community engagement and input, and so it's been wonderful to see that. The other item is our tree lights on Main Street. This is something this is a project that we're looking at increasing the quality of the lights and going to a more sustainable product so that we can reduce the amount of maintenance and change out of lights as we go forward. And we'll be looking at working with the Chamber of Commerce on the decoration and the area. So that's another project we'll be working on in the coming months. The next category is our operational improvements. Here, there's only 2 projects that were listed in this particular category. So the first one is our financial platform, software platform, enterprise resource platform. Happy to report that the financial platform has gone live, and a big kudos to Lisa, Kenneth, and the whole team over at Administrative Services Department. Within 4 weeks, they were able to take us from the old system to the new system, and amazing changeover with minimal interruptions. The next project we're working on right now is our GIS implementation. So we're looking at, we've been using the county system, and it's been it's been useful from property data information, but it doesn't give us an opportunity to add any of our utilities, to manipulate and work with the data. It's limited to just background research. And so what we're looking at doing is getting a consultant on board and going with an Esri platform to have our own GIS system. There's a potential for sharing of consultant or staff within the different departments. I know John has been talking to our partners in SAM because this is a common need, and there doesn't seem to be a need in our city for a full-time person. So we're looking at seeing how we can work that and have a person that can help all of our needs.
What does GIS stand for?
Geographic Information Software. It is, and with our own license, we can really utilize the full potential of this asset.
One of the keys that, and this is even growing more important, even though we've been collecting data and that we can add to this, but the Lucity software that SAM operates is a GIS-based software, so we're trying to make sure that that data and information is available both between the city and obviously SAM. The second piece of this is that the permitting piece of the Cassell project in particular is a GIS-based document or program. Now, we can limp our way through, but having our own system and making that work will make that Cassell system certainly much more productive, much more usable, and so something that we're working on. So, and everything is heading that way when it comes to these types of software. The Water District right now is implementing their a new software that is GIS-based for all of their infrastructure projects and asset management. So it's all part of the package.
The beauty of it is that you can create multiple layers that can overlay each other, so that you can, overlay your natural resources on your land use plan, water basins. You can see how everything, fits together. You can have census data, utility lines, transportation networks, and just see, how it all fits together. And as you permit projects or make other changes to it, you can see how it affects, other layers of the map. It's a really incredible tool.
Yeah, thank you, John. And as you mentioned, on the ERP side, the permit platform is coming up next, which we're very excited about. Our next category, touch a little bit on some of our park improvement projects. I haven't pictured here, but Carter Park has been, we've been working on an interdepartmental team within the city staff, and that project's been moving forward and working on the environmental document as we speak. The projects that we have listed, I wanted to touch on a little bit is as part of our parks implementation plan, we are working on upgrades to the structure at Frenchman's Creek Park. Those have been ordered. We're waiting for the shipments, and you should be seeing improvements to that playground very soon. Ocean View Park, construction is wrapping up. I'm happy to report. We were able to get our new bathroom facility as well as quite a bit of site improvements completed. And that was due in part to our maintenance crew stepping up and helping out with some of the site improvements to really conserve our funding and really improve that park And as mentioned earlier, we will be having a ribbon cutting in early April. Another project was our Poplar Gateways project. That has had a very robust community input process. We're moving forward with our environmental impact report preparation, which will include looking at both decomposed granite and asphalt for our bike lanes. We do not want to limit ourselves to the type of material at this point, and there's pros and cons to both types. So we really want to make sure that we keep the ability to make that decision at a future time.
Hey, just real quick on that one. Yeah, sorry. This picture has 2 walkways in it, which is one idea that I'd support if we wanted to go that route. Or I am also interested in possibly widening the path, even if it's just a foot, to accommodate both pedestrians and bikes if we, in the future, have the option.
Genius, Mayor, genius. One of the alternatives that we're going to be looking at is a single bike paved path and 2 to 3 foot on each side of decomposed granite for walking and going with that. We know that's a pretty common place with the Bay Trail in particular, but other trails as well. And we also may need to compress the size of this to deal with some of the environmental constraints and wetlands that we're going to be delineating and working through that. So that's an alternative that we're evaluating under the EIR as we speak, frankly. So great idea. I cannot let this go, and while we're having a happy time, I need to say something, and it's a bit of a public shaming for someone in the community out there. We yesterday found the door to one of the bathrooms demolished, and screws were basically knocked loose, and the hinge from kicking. You could see the footprints all on it multiple times and kicking and dealing with that. The manufacturer was coming out to do some work and dealing with that today, so hopefully that got repaired and they were bringing the materials to deal with it. But, I can't tell you how disappointed I was, and also in the issues of folks being vigilant in terms of walking, listening, and just reporting things when things are happening. That had to be making a lot of noise. I can't imagine someone not being able to hear someone kicking multiple times and knocking loose a metal door from its hinges. So that's not to blame the folks who didn't report it, didn't hear it. But the bottom line is that I hope that people will be watching vigilant, and those that are users of this park will really take to adopting this and keeping this the beautiful park that it always has been, but the more beautiful park that it is today. So thank you for letting me get on the soapbox on that one a little bit.
Our facility improvements category, this is actually a good example of our bidding environment. This facility, the Ted Adcock Community Center, this was a project that went out to bid last year. We ended up getting one bid. It was about 55% over the engineer's estimate. And with that, the council rejected that proposal, and we looked at alternatives. Our maintenance staff ended up taking quite a bit of the load, ordering materials, contracting subcontractors to do specific items like the flooring, the fire suppression system. But it took away from some of their other core duties, and so that's part of the challenges of our bidding environment. It was a relatively small project for a building contractor, and therefore it wasn't very favorable. And the one contractor that was willing to submit a bid heavily loaded it. So another example of our challenge, some of our challenges, but I have to say the bathrooms and the entryway look great. The windows in the South Day rooms have made much of an improvement as far as the temperature controls. And I'm happy to report that our kitchen is moving forward, and we're looking at completing that in the next 6 to 8 weeks, and that's by sheer will of our maintenance staff. We touched on the courtyard a little bit, so I won't go into detail there. Another project that we've been working on is our Main Street, the street lights on Main Street. Another great example of our maintenance staff, they stepped up and they're actually doing the replacement of the heads to a new fixture. The challenge with the older street lights were the parts were hard to come by. They were older. It got to a point where some of the screws had rusted where you couldn't even open some of them. So it was time. And so our staff is going through, they started on the Highway 1 side of Main Street. They're working their way towards 92, and they will be continuing through Main Street. So you'll see them working diligently on those over the next few months.
And these will all be LED. I'll jump in briefly on this one too. One of the things Bob was really open to a interesting approach. We were looking at this being a contractor-only project, and our staff, my staff, came to us and said, you know, we can do this work. We just need the equipment to be able to do it. And oh, by the way, that equipment, that lift that we can, mechanical lift we can get, we can actually change out other things and flags. We can also wash the windows at the library, and we can do all kinds of things. So what you did tonight in your mid-year budget, one of those adjustments was to shift money from the actual capital project into equipment, with which we bought a used lift, a boom lift, for our guys to be able to go out, do this work, and that'll be an asset for our benefit, for the community's benefit, for the years to come, basically for the cost of what our contractor would have been, a one-time deal with that. They also learn a trade, and they learn, work in electrical, electrician work. So I think it's a win-win-win all the way around. I thank Bob and you ultimately for approving that, but Bob for seeing the value in that and allowing us to move forward in that way.
We've been making a lot of headway on our sewer capital projects. We recently completed two rehab projects. We had our citywide point repairs project, which looked at fixing significant breaks throughout our system, throughout the city. We've been reducing the amount of inflow and infiltration from stormwater and groundwater into our systems, which does ultimately reduce the load on the treatment plant and therefore our contribution towards that investment. We've also been working, we've also recently completed our manhole rehabilitation project, which again looks at repairing and lining damaged and cracked manholes, where we had the similar situation of infiltration of stormwater and groundwater, where we increased the amount of water going through our systems, which didn't need to be there. Also, another very significant project, the Ocean Colony Pump Station and Force Main improvement project. That's a $2.8 million project. We've been working with Ocean Colony Partners on easements, and the good news is we're close to finalizing those. This project has gone out to bid and will be coming back to the City Council for approval in the near future. That project it tackles a very significant liability for the city. We have old transite pipe that is being used as a force main. The integrity of that pipe has met its 60-year lifespan, and this will help a lot of us sleep better at night, knowing that those pipes will be replaced with new materials with a new life expectancy of 50 plus years. Our street improvements program, a few highlights here, our Poplar traffic calming and safety project. We've been working, we've had several community meetings. We've received a lot of great input from the community at large. We had a survey that went out and received quite a bit of responses, which was amazing. And we are moving forward with our design and environmental review and working with Caltrans on our requirements for the grant funding. So we're looking at having our next community meeting towards the late spring, early summer, hopefully catch folks before we go to, before school lets out, so we can make sure we get everybody to touch base and look at the 35% design. The picture in the middle is actually Main Street Bridge. I chose this photo. This was from last week. We had some testing that was being done on the bridge decking, and that was some night work because we had to close one of the lanes down. And we were checking for the type of reinforcement that was in the deck itself. This was part of the reconnaissance that we need to do to inform our design and the environmental review. So that project's moving forward with the environmental review. We've had some challenges with the some of the with Caltrans and some of the specifics on the project, with the safety hardware, as well as some of the historic features of the bridge. We have been working our way through the environmental review, and we will be looking at a Main Street Bridge Advisory Committee meeting in the next month or two to brief them on where we are and touch base on how to move forward. The Highway 1 South Safety and Operational Improvement Project has been moving forward. We have been, one of the main pieces that we've been seeing as far as construction is the undergrounding of the utilities across Highway 1 and a portion of Main Street. We are almost done with the undergrounding piece, which will really help us as we move forward into our construction of the signal and the street improvements. So as we wrap that up, by next week we should be all done. We should actually see the overhead lines removed. And as soon as we get our approval from Caltrans on the encroachment permit, which we've had just a couple of little minor tweaks here and there, once we get that approval, we will be able to go out to bid. So we're looking at awarding a contract in the fall to winter of this year. Last but not least, our trail improvements category. We've been doing quite a bit of work on this in this area, and another bidding environment conundrum hit us with the Poplar Beach vertical access. It was a smaller project. It did not require a formal bid, but we followed the guidelines of a formal bid. We sent the bid, the package out to the builders exchanges. We sent it to our local contractors as well as regional contractors. Unfortunately, we received no bids on this project. So what we're looking at our design and looking at making some modifications. No, this one's a little bit, we don't have the equipment to take care of this one, so this will not be an in-house project. But we're looking at making some modifications to our design and making it a little bit more, not making it more expensive, but actually looking at reducing some of the challenges of the project. And so that we can move forward. We'd like to get this project done in the next 45 days. And if we reduce the scope, I think that's doable. However, just with the current design, we just didn't get any bids, unfortunately. So another one of the challenges that we have to face. But our hope is to get it done before the summer months, because if we don't, then we're looking at early winter start, which really won't help tourists and residents during the upcoming season. The Cañada Verde staircase, that project was completed recently, and happy to report that what we did was we injected a lightweight, environmentally sensitive polymer to basically take up the void that was, and that protects the structural component that was put in place a few years ago. So at this point, this project is relatively complete. We've put the dressing on it to protect the structural elements from the environment, and we've done a little bit of aesthetics to blend it into the riprap that was existing over there. And last but not least, just want to touch on our bikeway connectivity project. This is the extension of the East Side Parallel Trail on the northern side of the city limits. This is from Roosevelt to Murata Road. This is the project that received a TDA Article 3 grant at the last council meeting. So we have a well-funded project budget now. This project connects to the extension of a county Class 1 facility that will take folks all the way to El Granada Elementary, hopefully in the very near future. And then it will leave us with a few other areas to fill in as far as our bike connectivity, but it's a great step in the right direction. So we're happy that one's moving forward. We currently have been doing some geotechnical investigations. We're working on our design and starting on our biological resource evaluation and our environmental review.
I just wanted to, with the Cañada Verde staircase, we did an emergency repair just for the historical perspective. We were required by that permit to come back and finalize a permanent fix. This is the permanent fix, so we have now met our obligations and commitments in terms of that project. And so we'll be watching, obviously, for ongoing erosion and all the things that happen. But as far as this fix and this current situation, we have met our requirements from the Coastal Commission.
With our bikeway connectivity, what portions won't be done?
There are several portions on the southern side of town that those are on our that identified in our capital improvement program, but they're currently unfunded. On the northern side, the only piece.
Wavecrest to Miramontes Point.
Yeah, Wavecrest to Miramontes Point Road, essentially, and both sides. On the northern side of the city limits, it would just be around Frenchman's Creek. Frenchman's Creek to Spindrift, because the Highway 1 North project, I didn't touch on the Highway 1 North. That will continue our bike path from Main Street all the way to Spindrift. So then that segment from Spindrift to Rousseau Francais is the last piece on that site.
And what are we doing about getting that done?
That is the challenge with that one is the bridge. So either we need to widen the existing Highway 1 bridge or add a parallel bridge. So there's a cost impact to that. We're looking at scoping that project and looking at opportunities for grant funding. That would really go a long way to get that piece built.
What we're struggling with that is that most of those grants look at cost benefit, and their assessments of it. And that's going to be a high cost and, somewhat marginal value in terms of what they're going to, granting agencies are going to look at. We understand that the value of it and the needs and the safety issues. Certainly, we had one death there, in the recent years in the vicinity of that. We want to make that happen, but from a pure dollar and cents piece and value to benefit ratio, it's a tough one to grant. So that's the challenge.
So next steps, we're going to be working on our update for the 2021 fiscal year capital improvement program. We will be taking that update to the Parks and Recreation Commission, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, the Planning Commission, and ultimately City Council for adoption. Another item that we'll be working on in conjunction with that is our update to our CIP webpage. Per the council's listening session recommendations, we are going to be moving towards the stories. And so what you will ultimately see is a story for each one of these eight categories, and then in depth and then within those stories, it would discuss the individual projects and provide links to more information, to project schedules. And so that's something that we'll be working on bringing live at the beginning of the next fiscal year. I know there's quite a bit of projects I did not go through tonight, and I apologize if there's anything specific you want me to discuss. I'm happy to do so, but that concludes my presentation.
Yes, a lot of good stuff. Council, Harvey?
One of the things that was brought up more than once at the listening sessions was signage. And it seems to me that it wouldn't be very expensive to put some decent signs up on Highway 92 and also Highway 1. I think the bang for the buck there is really
Are
good.
we talking about wayfinding signs?
Yeah.
Wayfinding?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one of the projects.
Mr. Mayor, member of the council, I was at the listening session as well, just to clarify for them. It was wayfinding specific for the downtown. The comment came up about when people are coming down Highway 92, the sign that exists there, you either can't see it or it's just really too small or deficient. And so having a better sign to point people to Main Street and the downtown, I think we heard 2 or 3 comments to that effect, as I recall.
And let me just, the wayfinding signs has been on our list. There was a design that's 6 years old at this point. My understanding is that the city manager's office in particular is going to be reevaluating that, working with all of us. So I think that, I think they've been heard. We all agree, I think in principle, that looking at that sign program and reinvesting and reevaluating kind of what that looks like is an important thing. So I think we can act quickly on that.
We could get some of those like rubber things, fill them full of air and let them wave people in. Just temporarily. No, not really.
Anybody else have any comments? No. Do we have a motion?
No motion needed.
No motion needed.
There is motion on the CIP.
There's lots of motion on the CIP. It's nice to see. And these are all major projects that we've talked about over time, so it's nice to see the movement happening. So thank you so much, and we're excited to hear more.
Next item?
So Mr. Brownstone is looking for a slight break before we do the next item. Yeah. Yeah, he wants to do a 30-minute break, so we'll take a look. No, 5-minute break. Here we go. Here we go.
All right.
I feel like we brought a prop. Okay, is it? No.
Holy moly.
Let me get back in here. All right, we are on item 3C. Adopt the City of Half Moon Bay Sanitary Sewer Management Plan 2019 update. Here we go.
So thank you, Mayor, council members, and again, I'll let Moz do most of the work here. But I just wanted to just say this. This is one of those things that behind the scenes for the most part that our staff, our contract consultant folks, Housing Associates, Mark Thomas are working on, all these folks. Sometimes there's a question I think about, what are we doing, what's going on? A lot behind the scenes, not so much here publicly, just because nobody really wants to know. They just want to know when they flush that it's going somewhere and it's being treated and it's going in the right places and environmentally protected. But this is one of those things that we must do every 5 years, and we're here to present the update and just remind folks that there's a lot that goes into operating and maintaining your sewer system. And we thank those that are helping us, and we hope that you'll find this informational and informative.
Thank you, John. So tonight I'll be going over our sewer system management plan, which I'll reference as SSMP, and our overflow emergency response plan, the OERP, 2019 updates. Our staff recommendation is to receive this presentation, and then we'd be asking for an adoption of the update of the SSMP and the OERP. So the SSMP and OERP are required updates every 5 years by the State Water Board. We have a number of mandatory elements, 11 mandatory elements to be specific, that are required to be a part of our SSMP. And I'll be going through a little sampling of that. But it touches on high-level things such as goals and organization, legal authority, and it gets into specifics as far as evaluation criteria, response plans. So it's a very robust document. It's a very large document, so we didn't provide it in its totality. It is available on our website for anybody that wants to go and read it. It's available under our sewer page. You can download the entire document, and it's about 600 pages. So that's why we wanted to conserve space for the presentation. So with that, what is an SSO? SSO stands for sanitary sewer overflow. Essentially, it's an accidental spill. It's when wastewater finds its way outside of the pipes and into the environment, whether it's a waterway or not. And there are typically 3 categories that are assigned through the State Water Board. A category 1 is any volume that reaches a waterway. It requires a call to the Office of Emergency Services within 2 hours. It's very, very specific requirements for those. Category 2 is based on volume. Over 1,000 gallons spill, however, it doesn't reach a waterway. So there's some containment that's in place there. Then the category 3, which is the least impactful in the eyes of the water board, is under 3,000 gallons and does not reach a waterway. So limited exposure, relatively easy to clean up, not a major long-term impact to the environment. The Overflow Emergency Response Plan, or OERP, it identifies everything from key personnel to documentation. Much like any emergency, the intent is to be prepared and to be able to respond in a moment's notice. With these types of events, the quicker you can react, the less impact you can have to the spill. Undetected, a category 3 could turn into a 2 or a 1. And so being on top of it and responding quickly is really important. One of the elements of our SSO response activities, so this is our response activities. This flow chart is for SSOs and it identifies our current sewer operations structure. So this has been updated to modify, it's been modified and updated to reflect the key players, Mark Thomas, Vivian Housen, city staff, SAM personnel. And part of our required updating is just making sure that the players are identified in this document.
I'm going to point out the last SSO.
The last SSO, that's that picture on the right. That was a category 3. It was a small overflow. I want to say in 6 gallons in the golf course. And again, this was one that was it was our first SSO event in the last 2 years, and I was hoping for another clean year, but unfortunately we had this little one to deal with. But since then we've repaired the defect that caused this and have moved forward. Another element of our SSMP is the notification process. Again, this is a key element. Depending on the severity of the spill and the response process, identifying our current structure. And so it spells out exactly how, once an SSO event is called in, who notifies who ultimately, and how high do you have to notify depending on the type of event. Here is a sample. This is one of the overflow response plans from Pelican Point Pump Station. And what this shows is it shows a few different elements. The first one is the first one I wanted to highlight is number 2 on this list. So that is the location of the wet well. So when there's that's where generally most SSO events would occur at a pump station. The wet well is essentially the holding facility for effluent that comes in that gets pumped into the different pipes that gets then conveyed to the same treatment plant. So
first, let me just, for orientation, this is the RV park. Next door is the Kenyatta Cove. This Pelican Point lift station picks up Moon Ridge and Kenyatta Cove and the RV areas and conveys, and then is pumped up in through the golf course out to the gravity line, which is in Redondo Beach Road. So just for perspective, what you're looking at and where you are. So just wanted to make that clear.
Thanks for the clarification, John. So then number 1 is another critical identification. It is where the potential overflow from that wet well would go. And that's key because in case of a pump station, there's quite a bit of volume going through these pump stations. And so it's important to identify for any personnel, whether it's somebody on call or somebody new, they know exactly where the potential impact would be and where to respond to. And then finally, number 3 is is where to discharge the cleaned up effluent. And so that's important to know because once the spill is contained and the cleanup is started, there needs to be a point of discharge. We don't want to we want to make sure that we have a method of transporting that to the proper system and contain it from continuing to leak. So these are key elements and mandatory requirements as part of our SSMP. I want to talk a little bit about fats, oils, and grease. We have some lovely photographs to share. These are from some recent grease interceptor inspections that were done at some local businesses. What you see in the tubes on the top pictures are fats, oils, and grease that were taken from a sample of an interceptor at a local business, and essentially that's not what you want to see. That when you see that What that shows is that actually is the interceptor is not being cleaned and maintained properly. The frequency has not been maintained. And what the smaller picture on the left side of the screen, that's what you want to see when you do a sampling of an interceptor. The general threshold is 25%. If a grease interceptor is 25% or more full of that material, it's out of compliance and would require an action plan. The businesses that were inspected, they've been re-inspected. So what happens is once Mark Thomas goes out and does the initial inspection, and either they pass or they find an area of improvement, and then they're on the schedule for re-inspection. So far, we've been going through all of our businesses, and we've had some follow-ups, and for the majority of the businesses, the second visit has been a clean visit, and they've been under compliance. Another piece that I wanted to touch on here is going through our FOG program, which we call the Fat Oils Grease, just to make it a little simpler. The FOG program is going to be updated, and we're looking at doing a relatively robust sewer ordinance update. And what we want to do is identify exactly what our FOG program. There's some missing elements there, and so we're going to be bringing that back to council for review and approval. But we're going to look at a very substantial update, and that will go everywhere from the required procedures for businesses, cost allocation for cost recovery, and spelling out a lot of the details as far as what businesses are required to do when it comes to the FOG program and other parts of the sewer program. We've been continuing to improve our cleaning methods. We've been working with staff and our consultants to look at our hotspots. We want to not only clean and maintain our system, but also make sure that we're cleaning and maintaining the right areas of our system, if that makes sense. So we have our hotspot areas, and we have our mainline cleaning. Those are the two distinguished. Hotspots are generally areas that have had a SSO event in the past, or a known problem spot by visual inspection or other means. And by having this collaborative approach with Mark Thomas, Vivian Housen, and Sam, we have looked at improving our cleaning methods. We've made some modifications. Sam has made some modifications to their equipment to bring it up to current standards. We have looked at the frequency of cleaning and looked at ways of conserving expenditures where it wasn't needed by going through and assessing and evaluating the cleaning process, what comes out of it. So we've been making some changes to our schedule to better optimize our cleaning methods as well as saving money.
Is that a Vector truck in that photo?
In the photo, that is a Vector. That is not our Vector truck. That is a Vector truck, and that's essentially what they would be doing to do a cleaning event. So they would they have specific nozzles and baskets on the ends of these Vector trucks. They put them through the main lines, and it goes through and cleans out some of the more of the stickier material, things that haven't been gone through with just normal flow.
And I just, to be clear, as a result of improved cleaning, the closed circuit TV work that we've done, and inspection, we have been able to significantly reduce the number of hot spots needing to be cleaned and or the frequency of those. And so those ultimately are resulting in cost savings down the line for everybody with less work. So and we've seen that with that, but we've also been able to identify those areas that we weren't clear exactly what was out there. So we have a really great information now that we didn't have as a result of the latest CCTV work. So thanks.
So here is just a snapshot of our SSO trends since 2015. As you can see, we've reduced quite a bit. We had in 2015 6 events. dropped down to 2, and in 16, the next year, went back up to 6. And in 2017, end of 2017, early 18 is when we started looking at our new cleaning program, really looking at being effective and efficient in the locations that we address. And in 2018, we had no SSO events, which was fantastic. And in 2019, we had one SSO event, which was the photo at the golf course that I showed you. Again, relatively small spill, and it was due to a mechanical failure, and which has been since addressed. But the trend is going in the right direction. This is what we want to see as we go and update and reevaluate our methods, means and methods. Keeping the momentum going next year. So we've been working, we're going to be continuing on our, on looking at ways to improve our cleaning methods, combined with quality assurance and control. We want to make sure that we're going to continue, now that we've finished our hotspots, the closed caption television CCTV of our hotspots, we're going to be looking at expanding that to our main lines, looking at problem areas, and identifying issues and deficiencies that we need to address. As well as a smoke testing program. And that's something I didn't mention earlier, but we had a smoke testing program we did last year, and it identified a number of discrepancies in our system. We had some downspouts from residential properties that were connected to the sanitary sewer system, which increased our inflow and infiltration. It also identified some cracks in the pipes, and some just missing caps from sanitary sewer cleanouts. It's a very small, minor issue, but just simply having a cap on the cleanout will reduce the amount of inflow and infiltration into our system. So we're going to continue that. We're going to do another round of the smoke testing as well. And what that'll do is help us develop our scope of repair projects, the sewer point repair project, manhole rehab project, as well as identifying our other needs. We're also going to be moving forward, as I mentioned earlier, on our Ocean Colony Pump Station project. So we're looking at starting construction during the next fiscal year. That project is anticipated to be about 12 to 18 months, but we're happy to move forward on that and looking forward to starting that in the near future. And we are also working on our Pelican Point Pump Station project. That's a small project to update our generators and some of the pumps at that pump station, and that design is underway, and we're hoping to start construction sometime in the next fiscal year. So with that, we have a recommendation for the council to consider to adopt the sanitary sewer management plan 2019 update and authorize the city manager or his designee to monitor and update the plan.
That includes the OERP too.
That includes the OERP, which is a component of the SSMP.
All right, thank you so much. I know we have tons of questions on council, so we'll start off with Dr. Penrose.
No.
I'm just messing. Go for it. Anybody have any clarifying questions before we move to a motion? All right, go for it.
Okay, can you give me back that motion? You got it. I move that we adopt the sanitary sewer management plan 2019 update and authorize the city manager or his designee to monitor and update the plan.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. And that is the end of resolutions and staff reports. We will move on for future discussion, possible agenda items. Hearing none, we will move onward to city council reports.
Yeah, I just want to let everybody know that the San Mateo County Flood and Sea Level Rise Resiliency District, the new district created by statute that's going to be looking at sea level rise issues along the bay and the coast of San Mateo County, has hired a CEO, and that person is Len Matterman, who currently is the general manager for the San Francisquito Joint Powers Authority, which works on flooding and stormwater issues for San Francisquito Creek. Len's been doing that quite a long time. We had some really good candidates that was really nice to get to know. And we're moving forward now that we have our office space and our CEO, and we'll be starting to work on an investment plan and a dog and pony show going out to all the cities in the county to talk about what might be needed and how much it's going to cost. So.
Very exciting. Anyone else? Good. Hearing none. Let's move on. I had to look up San Francisco's Creek just before that. Thank you all for attending. We are adjourned.